here we are back again with another official Planeswalker review. Thank you again to Oktagon for giving me Kaito Dancing Shadow to review. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with this guy. I didn't know really if I would be a big fan of him at first, but after playing with him, yeah, I think he's pretty good. I think he's very much in the fun category. Would he be a top tier walker? Maybe somewhere toward the top? Mid tier? Or, well, we already know he's not going to be low tier. But yeah, let's get into him. And as I've been doing with these brand new Planeswalker reviews, I've been doing Planeswalker comparisons. So here we are. We're going to be comparing Kaito Dancing Shadow to 3 of the other blue-black Planeswalkers I have. And blue-black is a color pie that I'm a pretty good fan of. Blue and black are pretty potent together, and they allow for some interesting interactions with each other. So over the years, I've collected Ashiok Nightmare Muse, Ashiok Sculptor of Fears, and Tezzeret the Schemer. So right away, I don't know what's up with Oktagon lately, releasing all these Planeswalkers with fairly low HP, a lot of them under 100. Never been a big fan of that. I mean, you can get by, and I guess this colored pie doesn't have a ton of Planeswalkers that have a lot of HP, but I guess maybe there's some thought there that if you give your Planeswalker abilities strong enough, then the hit points aren't as crucial, but you know how it goes. You get into a long battle and you need to crawl your way back, and sometimes 10 hit points, whatever, is the difference between a win and a loss. So one of those reasons that I probably wouldn't use this guy in coalition events, but yeah, he's got fairly low HP. I wish he had a little bit more than what he's got right now, but pretty straightforward. Ashiok Sculptor of Fears having the most HP is going to be the best at it. So here we go again, mana gains. If you're new to my channel, my quick philosophy on mana gains is that I prefer high gains in 2 colors over meager gains spread across all my colors. Usually the difference between getting your cards out and not is based on how many on-color matches you can make. So I'm not too worried about having gem conversion that does a lot for me in terms of just creating swaps for me. I want those swaps to be in my color pie because that's just going to usually get me the most mana. And so my favorite Planeswalkers when it comes to that are going to have high mana gains in their respective colors. So that's why Tezzeret the Schemer is always going to get the least for me. I mean, for the time when he was a new Planeswalker, these were really good mana gains. Blue and black being, even in him, pretty decent for the time. But these days, to be able to have +5/+5 on blue and black is just going to be the most favorable for me. So the only reason I give Ashiok Nightmare Muse just one knock above Kaito's is, so this is like a very niche reason, but you can actually use Erixmithis in Ashiok Nightmare Muse, and it will be still pretty useful because of the +5 to blue and the 0 on green, so you're not losing as much out on using Erixmithis with them than with Kaito. Deck limits. You pretty much, depending on how you're going to build, you really can't go wrong with any of the newer Planeswalkers. Tezzeret the Schemer having 6 supports at the time was really nice, but his lack of spells kind of leaves him to be a little bit lacking in today's meta and the meta that's kind of been that way for the past, I don't know, 3 years of this game. So the lack of being able to have more than 5 spells in Tezzeret the Schemer's deck is just going to knock him down a bit. And since I'm such a support heavy player, I prefer a lot of supports in Planeswalker's deck limits. But I like to use Ashiok Nightmare Muse for certain spell based strategies. So it really depends on what you're going for. So I didn't give anybody necessarily the blue ribbon on this one, but I definitely give Tezzeret the Schemer the thumbs down. All right, loyalty abilities. So this is really what separates these planeswalkers as to what type of planeswalker they are, how you're going to play with them, and if ultimately they are worth grabbing for you. So Kaito's first ability, let's go over that first. An opposing creature without can attack and can't block at random gains can't attack and can't block until your next turn. You may return your last creature to your hand and lose 2 loyalty. If you do, repeat this effect once. So I almost never use this ability. It would be more useful if you knew what opposing creature at random would get that. If it was always like the first creature or targeted, it'd be a way more useful of an ability. Other than that, it's not really worth using unless you're trying to return your last creature to your hand. But our next ability you'll want to use more instead. So not a very useful ability. It can maybe sometimes you can spam it because the cost is only 4, and maybe use it to trigger your Ikor Moon Gauntlet if you have one. But moving on, Ashiok Nightmare Muse. Create a Nightmare Harvest token, 2 shields with Constellation. Exile the top 3 cards of your opponent's library, then destroy the top 3 cards of your library. And I think Constellation is when you cast an enchantment or aura. So there you go. Then pick one of the first 3 cards from your opponent's exile. Fetch that card, you gain 6 mana. Pretty decent ability. Nothing amazing. Both of those 2 things can help you in different ways. So I didn't give any of these planeswalkers a blue ribbon for their first ability because I think they're all relatively meh. They're definitely not the reason people play these walkers. But I guess I would give Ashiok Nightmare Muse on further thought the blue ribbon. And then Ashiok Sculptor of Fears. Oh, I'm pretty sure their first ability costs more than 4. Let me check real quick here. Yeah, it actually costs 6, so my graphic here is a little bit off. But anyway, Ashiok Sculptor of Fears, create a Night Terror token, 3 shields with when a creature card enters any player's graveyard from their library, your opponent loses 2 life. And destroy the top 4 cards of each player's library, then draw a card. So this ability is cool because it definitely goes along with their other abilities and any sort of library destruction that you may be playing with them. So not amazing on its own, but it's more functional as an ability that goes with their other abilities. And then Tezzeret the Schemer, cost 9, energize 4, and fabricate 2. So dependent on cards that are not in standard, never will be in standard probably, unless energize and fabricate come back to the game later on, but I don't know if it will. The reason that I give this one the thumbs down, even over Kaito's, is because, well, for one, the cost is 9, and that's a lot of loyalty to spend on an ability that really doesn't do much for you, especially in standard. You energize 4, that's going to do nothing for you except maybe help your second ability creature a little bit, but it's really not worth using it for that. And then Fabricate 2 is just a buff of 2 as long as the supports are on the battlefield. And so I guess that can kind of help when your third ability is on the battlefield. But with that cost being 9, it's just way overcosted for what it can do for you. All right, next one. Loyalty ability 2. So this is where Kaito starts getting a little more interesting. Draw a card. You may return the last creature to your hand. If you do, those last 3 cards in your hand gain 10 mana. So basically, in practice, how this will work is that you need to have at least 2 slots in your hand for this to really, for you to take advantage of this fully. Because what happens is you cast a card, or what happens is you use this ability. Your last creature returns to your hand. It has to be non-token. And not only does the card you just drew, your creature, but also the last card that you had in your hand when you use this ability will all get 10 mana. So you got to plan out your hand a little bit for that. But it's a really cool ability, especially if you're using it with a creature that costs 10 or less and it has a good ETB. And you'll be able to just put that creature back on the battlefield. It's really cool like that. And so you get a lot of mana that way as well. Really fun. I like this ability. I like this ability a lot. Ashiok Nightmare Muse. Cost 12. Return target creature opponent controls to its owner's hand. Then they exile 2 random cards from their hand. This is probably the ability I use Ashiok Nightmare Muse the most. I honestly don't play them that much for their ability. So this one has the most utility of any of them that they have. To me, at least. I know that some people build for their third, but it's not really something that I end up using them very much for. It comes handy in a pinch, but really I end up most of the time replacing that third creature. But I think I'm already talking too much about their third ability, so let's move on. Ashiok, Sculptor of Fears. Return the first card from target player's graveyard to your hand. That card gains full mana. Then, if that is not a creature card, your opponent loses 6 life and their first creature gets -6/-6. So this is probably the ability I use the least out of Ashiok, Sculptor of Fears. I mostly race to their third ability and just go from there. This has definitely some use to it, but I hardly ever look at my graveyard. So it's not something I really think about that much. So it's really dependent on what is already the first thing in your graveyard. So you never quite know how to work with it all that consistently. So it's kind of a bit random as to what you end up really benefiting from using this ability. But it's okay. It's just not one that I would rely on for much of anything. And then the last one, Tezzeret the Schemer. Again, probably the weakest of all these abilities. Summon a 4/4 living construct creature with, at the beginning of your turn, fabricate 2, overload 1. This creature gets +1/+1. So overload is when you match an energized gem of that number. So it's just not an ability that's going to be doing a lot for you. It's really slow to get things going with it. It fabricates 2 at the beginning of each turn, but it's so at the beginning of each of your turns, I should say. And it's just very slow to get going. It's really susceptible to being just removed with your opponent's abilities and spells or whatever. So it's really hard to rely on. It just doesn't do a lot for you. So that's why it gets the thumbs down. It was too hard for me to decide if I liked Kaito's or Ashiok Nightmare Muse's second more. They're both extremely useful, but they're completely different abilities. So they kind of get the tie. So the most fun thing I gotta say about Kaito is his Loyalty Ability 3. Building for this ability is pretty fun and definitely the reason that people, I think, will want to pick him up if they do. So, create 4 drone tokens. You may return the first non-token creature you control to your hand, and if you do, reinforce those tokens 4 times. And the cost is pretty cheap. It's only at cost 15. And let me show you what it does, actually. We'll go over here, the drone token. So this is what it does. It's an 8/8 creature token with Berserker and Death Touch. And when this creature is dealt combat damage, so when it attacks and is blocked, this also works. And your opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life for each 1 damage it was dealt. So you're basically doubling the amount of life loss that whatever the drone bashed into us. So when this creature is destroyed or exiled, your opponent loses X life and you gain X life. X is equal to this creature's power. So that's really cool because just alone having this drone on the board, it's a 8/8. And so say it bashes into an 8/8 creature. Your opponent will lose 8 times 2 because it's being dealt 8 damage from your opposing creature. So you're doing 16. And then when this creature is destroyed or exiled, your opponent loses 8 life and you'll gain 8 life because that is this creature's power, the drone. So it's basically a net positive of +8 to you and -24 to your opponent. So it just scales up so easily, especially with proliferate and escalate right now. So it's really easy to buff up this guy, and there are a lot of other ways to do it. So for example, if you return that non-token creature to your hand, and you have to be careful though, it's your first non-token creature you control, so make sure it's something that you really don't need to stay on the board to keep things going for yourself. But at the same time, you'll get a drone token stack that's going to be 16/16. So that's going to be really useful for a lot of things. Okay, Nightmare Muse's ability. Create a Greater Living Torment token, 4/6, unblockable hexproof. At the end of your turn, this creature's power and toughness becomes XX. X is the number of cards in your opponent's exile. When this creature attacks, exile the top 5 cards of your opponent's library. Then draw 4 cards. It's definitely not a bad ability. I don't want to make that seem like what I'm trying to say with it. But it's just the ability that I find the least useful out of all 4 of these. Because usually when I'm using Ashiok Nightmare Muse, it's just my play style. I'm not usually relying on this creature to be doing the majority of the winning for me, and I feel like that's kind of what you are supposed to do. At least that's what they're kind of built for. But especially in Legacy, where most of the good stuff that will exile your opponent will be, it's just not really. I'm usually doing different things with Ashiok Nightmare Muse that don't, where this creature will fit into my strategy. I honestly use it more for the drawing 4 cards, to be honest. Sometimes I'm using like a wizard class deck, so drawing 4 cards at the beginning of my turn is going to do a lot more for me than that creature will. So it's just me. Some people may totally disagree with that, but let me know in the comments if you don't agree there. I'm all right with that. Ashiok Sculptor of Fears. So this is also one of the main reasons to use Ashiok Sculptor of Fears, and was one of the main reasons I picked them up in the first place. Destroy the top 6 cards of each player's library. Return up to 1 of each different support from all graveyards to the board under your control. So yeah, you can get up to 12 different supports onto the battlefield. And you're mostly going to be doing it for your own supports, right? Although sometimes you get to take some really good supports from your opponent. But yeah, really good ability. One of the most useful ones. I would say that this will help you win games more than any of the other ones, probably. So, again, I didn't give this one. It was hard for me to decide between all three of the rest of the abilities here, which one was the blue ribbon one. But I think also on further thought, I will give Ashioks, Sculptor of Fears, the blue ribbon for the third ability. You can just really swing games in your favor, get you out of a jam, and will also just help you keep the lead if you're playing with amazing supports like I try to do. And then Tezzeret the Schemer, his third ability is the reason that I even pull out Tezzeret to this day from time to time. I just have a really soft spot for him and this ability. Even my Discord avatar is a version of Tezzeret the Schemer, so big fan of him. But create a support with 3 shields, and when a support you control is destroyed, your opponent takes 10 damage. So depending on what is in standard and what sort of support token makers you can give to Tezzeret the Schemer in blue and black is going to determine how useful of an ability it is in the end. So still a pretty decent legacy walker because you have so many different things at your disposal. But in this modern age, it's hard to rely on him for anything other than just being a fun planeswalker to mess with. But he is just one of those relic kind of planeswalkers. I just wouldn't recommend him for a player who's needing resources to be allocated elsewhere. So, thanks for all the fun memories, Tezzeret the Schemer, but you're kind of in the retirement home at this point. All right. Well, based on how I graded his loyalty abilities, he's somewhere in the middle. I don't know if he's better or worse than any of the Ashioks. I'd say he's probably just below Ashiok in power, but I like him. And you'll see how I took advantage of his loyalty abilities in the upcoming battles. So let's get on to the decks that I built. Alright, guys, so the first deck that I want to spotlight here is one from the community, and this is from BenRama, who has a brand new YouTube channel and has just been killing it, putting out tons of content, really cool videos, short and sweet, most of them, and he's doing some interesting, unique stuff over there, really spotlighting cards and doing elite pack reviews that are pretty fun to watch. So definitely show him some love and check out what he's doing on his YouTube. But anyway, so this deck I like because it's not crazy full of mythics and masterpieces like some of my decks tend to be. I can't help that I have a huge collection at this point. But what I like about this one is that it's really taking advantage of his second ability, which some people might not see as being that powerful, but you'll see in this deck that there's plenty of cards in here that cost less than 10, and one of the most crucial things about that ability is having cards that have a good enter the battlefield effect, especially the creatures, because and if they're at under 10 or near 10 makes it even better. So without further ado, I'll show you how this deck goes, and I think you'll like it. This poor guy Guest has only one battle won, So I'm wondering if they just started playing, got whooped in Platinum, and then just quit the game. I hope that's not what happened. I'm just making that up, but you never know with people if they stick with this game or not. I mean, it's got a pretty dense learning curve. I try and help people with my channel here to get better at the game, but you know, certain things aren't always going to go your way in this game, and they could be a little frustrating. But hey, come join me in Discord. So we get Sten and Urtai. Yeah, okay. Well, I think, yeah, Sten reduces cost of cards in your hand by 3. So what I want to do is set up my hand so that I will get the maximum benefit. So I got most of my cards filled with mana here. And the ones that don't are pretty close to being charged up. So we got our blade coil. And so what we could do here, I'll show you what you can do. You can return the last non-token card. So we get Urtai back in our hand, which means that next time we cast Urtai, we get a chance to destroy an opposing creature or Vanguard support. So let's go ahead and turn him off and then wait until we are able to do something to our opponent. It's got to maximize our resources here. Sten. Oh yeah, Urtai has flash. I forgot about that. So that's also awesome. Give one of our creatures imminent death. Cut your losses. And then if you want to, you can... Oh, okay. Well, oh yeah, that is one thing you have to worry about. You got to make sure there's enough space in your hand so that when you use his second ability, your creature comes back into your hand, and then that's the only way to get the boost of 10 mana to each of your 3 cards that it gives you. So that's one thing you have to be a little careful of. Do this. Another cut your losses. Go ahead and create our drone token. Put blade coil back into our hand, but that's okay. We're gonna do this here. Blade coil twice. Let's see, we get blue and black match. So we'll discard and draw. And there you go. That shows off. I mostly stuck with this second ability, but yeah, that was pretty fun. A variant you can do, you can add Tainted Adversary instead of Urtai. That's one that we discovered. And so the cool thing about that is that you can cast Tainted Adversary, then use his second ability, put Tainted Adversary back into your hand along with 30 mana also back into your hand. So when you cast Tainted next, you will drain for his effect and create zombie tokens really easily. So that is one thing that you can also do with him with this deck. If you have that card, but yeah, I was trying to keep it a little bit more in the peasant light mythic side. So yeah, on to the next one. Okay, in this deck, I wanted to share with you how you can go creatureless with Kaito. And, this is kind of a baller build. It's got a masterpiece, or two masterpieces, two mythics, two of them being PMA, so that makes them a little difficult to come across. But I want to share with you a little bit of the synergy happening here. So this one is mostly focused on maximizing his third ability, doing all sorts of cool things with that token. So if you remember, a lot of things that it can do, it deals damage equal to its power to your opponent when it dies or gets exiled. So return to action. This is one way to both get some life back, and this keeps it from being destroyed if you need it to. It gives it prevent damage when it attacks with Berserker. And then also Grafted Identity. This is a cool way to both steal your opponent's creature and deal damage with his third ability, with his drone token. This is one of the more fun decks that I've created with them, and yeah, I think that so yeah, this will be a pretty decent deck for going through creatureless nodes, any of those ones where you're required to cast 3 or less creatures or whatever. And yeah, let me show you how it works. All right, let's see here. I like getting Phyrexian Arena out first. We get ourselves a 5 swap. That's good. I guess we could go here. Get some Cascade going. If we could get to our third ability pretty quickly here, that'd be awesome. And we are at it already. So there we go. Leafkin loop deck. Let's see if we can outpace them. It's always difficult. But we can maybe steal one of his Leafkins if we get a chance. Ambiguity going as well. That'll be good for us. Boom, deal 9 damage, steal his creature, and then buff it up. But yeah, we got some good stuff going on here. We also have a painful quandary happening, so we can do some damage here. For when he tries to get a loop going, put a Leafkin Avenger back into my hand. Let's see, Ambiguity is gonna knock him down. Okay, well, also pulled the Void Ren. Yeah, Painful Quandary is a great anti-loop deck, so we got that going as well. And then, so we got this Leafkin we're gonna put down, and next turn we can, well, actually, we'll do this. We can use their creatures to fuel his second ability, which is really fun. Let's see, Mox Emerald. Let's go ahead and get that disabled. So you can see with all the proliferating and escalating I'm doing, I can get to my loyalty abilities back pretty fast. So yeah, that's usually how a battle with that deck can go. That this was a legacy battle and it still went totally fine. So yeah, I think it's a pretty solid concept there. And as we get more sets to come in, maybe it can improve. But let's move on to my favorite deck. All right, now as you can see, this deck is also built for his third ability, and there are some fun things happening in it. Like with the last deck I created, the Gauntlet and Tide are there to mostly proliferate, but we can also escalate with this deck because we have one creature that creates a toxic token, so that's also cool. But Kaito Shizuki, he's been, I don't know, debugged, and I shouldn't say nerfed because he was never working properly. But you do now require him to have 7 shields on his support to be able to do the fetching creature thing. But that's easy enough with this deck because of the Gauntlet and Tide. And Jin Gataxius, you probably haven't seen this card in play much yet because it's a masterpiece, pretty hard to come across. But just you wait, you'll start seeing him more and more often. But yeah, he's gonna be a monster to deal with. He's great because not only does he discard all of your opponent's cards at the end of their turn, but his card draw happens before Tamio's ability happens. So you'll have every turn, if everything is set up, a hand full of 6 cards, all with full mana on them to start your turn. So how does that sound? And then Majestic Metamorphosis. This card actually does double duty. Not only will it buff our drone token, but because it gives it the artifact subtype, you could actually use Venser's ability on your drone token and Jin Gataxius if you really want to put it on him. But what happens is when you proliferate, if you control 2 or less creatures, don't control a card named Phyrexian Golem, create a Phyrexian Golem. Otherwise, target artifact creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains flying and lifelink until the end of your turn. So the nice thing about this card is that you can give lifelink to either your drone token anytime you proliferate and you buff him, but you give Jin Gataxis pretty much that same ability. So lots of cool synergy, and yeah, I can't wait to show you here. Okay, so Tamio down first, I think, and then Gauntlet will be the right move. Sapphire will go a long way toward helping with that, I think. See, this is what you can do with Majestic Metamorph. You can give your Jin Gataxius some lifelink, and he will buff on proliferation now. And we can also do this with our drone token. And see what I mean? Tomio to the rescue. What I'm actually going to do here is exile, create more drones, put Venzer back in my hand. Oh, it was the first one. But anyway, you can put Jin Gitaxias back on the battlefield and then just keep it moving. Proliferate. Jin Gitaxias is way more valuable than that little measly token. Give him Metamorph. Buff him. Proliferate. So now every time we cast a card, we proliferate. So that's also buffing our creatures. And then we also get to proliferate again as we use Venser. Extra swaps due to the gauntlet. Here we go again. Oops. Proliferate. I meant to use his third ability. Oh well. That's fine. Kaito put another Venser on the board. And then here we go again. Really hard for somebody to claw back from this setup here. I mean, I'm pretty much won here. But let's see what else we'll do. Save one of their stupid cards. Yeah, sure. All this proliferation buffing is just making our creatures that much stronger. Venser put lifelink on them, which is also rad. Oops. I could cut my losses actually, and I could have just won there, but here we go. Watch. Yep. So yeah, there we go. You can see the power of that deck once it gets really set up and going. And yeah, lost 62 life, and that's how big our token was at that point. So yeah, lots of fun. Got to see Jin Gitaxias in action. That was a card I definitely chased with Jewels, so make sure you do that next time he's in the vault, and you'll just be shutting down your opponent in major ways. Really fun card. So, now going through everything that I felt like I can do with Kaito Dancing Shadow, would you pick him up for crystals? Would you buy him for cash? What do you think? It's hard for me to tell people what to spend their money on because everybody's got different priorities, different budgets. But I think for the average person who is a supporter of this game, is willing to spend money on it, I think he's fun. He's definitely not an essential planeswalker, but for somebody who is looking just for more interesting variety in their planeswalkers and want to show Oktagon a sign of support by giving money to them, I think you can go way worse than Kaito. I think he's pretty fun. I think that, especially what is in standard right now, he really benefits from. I think he's definitely, for everybody who likes to spend crystals on Planeswalker, worth picking up. So even if you don't buy him for real life cash, definitely save up that 650 crystals to pick him up later on because I think he's a blast. I've kind of grown on Tyvar, Jubilant Brawler, since I've last reviewed him. So I feel like Kaito has the maybe the chance to grow even higher in my ranking as I use him more. But yeah, he's kind of a fun go-to training grounds planeswalker for me at the moment. And now after I'm done doing this review, I might retool some of the decks so I can use them for some of the weekly events. So he's definitely usable in competitive events. Would I use him in coalition events? Probably not. I just feel like you have to be an S to S plus tier walker for me to want to use him in a coalition event. And I'd probably put him low A, high B, somewhere in that range. I'd say that's kind of where my Ashioks are. Ashioks are kind of like mid A tier to me, I would say. And being a low A is just right about just close to on par with them. So yeah, thanks again for watching these. I hope you get a lot out of my reviews here. I know people have been pretty happy with this comparison that the four walker comparison that I've been doing lately. And so if you guys want me to keep doing those, definitely give this a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments if you like it, if there's anything you want me to change about it or add to it. I also really love doing these community-led decks that I get to spotlight here. So my channel can be a little bit more of a platform for other players who are just as passionate about this game as I am, but they don't have the time or ability to create a YouTube channel. So definitely, if you guys are interested in hitting me up for deck ideas that you may have for upcoming Planeswalkers, I'll definitely be soliciting for them in my Discord, which is actually D3Jected's Discord, and I'll put a link to the Discord in the description here. But yeah, it's really awesome. I'm spending a lot of time in the D3Jected Discord, and especially we have a Telegram group chat. So Telegram, if you're not familiar with it, is a messenger app, and so a lot of us are on. A lot of the most dedicated players in our coalition is on Telegram, and it's a ton of fun to be brewing decks and just talking a lot. It's just a lot of real-time feedback, and it's just really been upping my game. So yeah, if you guys are interested in joining the Discord and hopping aboard the little D3Jected family that we have here, click on the link below for the Discord invite. All right, guys, till next time.